Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Best of the West, a place for all things LEC and LCS, coming at you with a new angle, ignore the mess on my dresser, and a new episode for a brand new one, because the one I did before plans was botched, and I ended up deleting it because I did not understand the bracket, and I was so embarrassed that, yeah, it's non-existent anymore, and I failed to do the one before Swiss stage. I swear I'm consistent, guys. I swear. No, I'm not. Um, but yeah, I guess we should start off on a somber note. Talk about our fallen brethren in EU, Madeline's Koi. They are unfortunately out. As in lastima, I think is how you say it. It's a shame. I hope I said that right. Um, I kind of wanted to do a bit of a eulogy for them, but then I realized that this is more of an anti-eulogy because apparently they're supposed to like be appraisals and very positive. So I guess this is more of an obituary. But yeah, I just wanted to talk about them. I guess we should start off on a positive note, which is that this is actually probably one of their most or least disappointing performances. I mean, there was the one where they had the group of life back in groups when we had groups. I think that was 2021, where they had them and TL and LNG. So I think you know that group was probably their best one as an org. Um, but this is second. Um, because they made it out of plans, which they have failed to do twice, and they did not give over any wins to NA teams, which is something that a lot of EU fans don't like Mad for, giving over so many wins in 2022 and 2023. Um, so yeah, that's a positive note, is that this is actually pretty good for the org. Um, but aside from that, let's just talk about what they went through. So they did make it out of plans, like we mentioned, and they did pretty well in plans. Um, they got out somewhat convincingly. I hope you guys cannot hear that dog barking. Um, they got out somewhat convincingly, um, and they went into, you know, into BLG. That was their first matchup. um, when no one really blames them for losing to PLG. Like, yeah, they did get a lead early because of that tower dive and Cassante things, but even if you got an early game lead against BLG, unless it's like, 5, 6K gold, like, no one's going to blame you for losing that game because this is the first seed from LPL. They have amazing macro. So, yeah, no one really blamed them for losing to to BLG. Then they matched up against PSG. That's a different story. They lost it, but we do kind of blame them. There were a lot of mistakes being made, and sure, it was a bad draft. There were composition issues. They had a wombo combo up against two carries in Rumble and Kaisa that can buy Zanyas, but even with that factoring in, the combos weren't really comboing, if you catch my drift. Um, so, you know, even though it's hard to land those combos, I feel like they didn't try and get enough of those combos in. And sure, yes, it's ult reliant, but like still. So that's why I say it's a different story. I'm not just going to say we 100% blame them because there were some issues there, but we have to keep in mind that the coordination wasn't there and there were a lot of individual mistakes. Kind of like when Frescowi just you know face checked a brush on Smolder. I think that's what he was playing. So yeah, there were a lot of individual mistakes and coordination mistakes. And then they went up against GAM, and they were eliminated. They won the first game, but they lost the next two. And something I kind of wrote down is that the story of the series was like team fighting. team fighting and picks, which is something that, I saw in terms of the next two games, because they won the first one, but the next two looked very different. In the first game, Alvaro had some really good plays. He was making really good picks. But in game two, in game three, he was getting picked off quite a lot. I think it was worse in the second game. I think he went like 0-4 or 0-3 before they entered the mid game. So yeah, he was getting picked off a lot. And game two was won in the late game actually by team fighting. It's something we need to keep in mind. Game two felt really, really close for the overwhelming majority of the game. It wasn't until after the 30-minute mark where GAM started to swing things in their favor. They won with superior team fighting. There was a bot-side river fight at 31, and then there was a top-side jungle corridor fight at 35, and both of them were 3 for no, 3 for nothing. And I think the kill score and gold was fairly even before that bot-side river fight. So it felt close. I didn't take a screenshot of like the scoreboard or anything in terms of like golden turrets, but it felt like it was pretty damn close. And then they have these two great team fights, and they sort of just flip the game on its head in their favor, and they win it. And then game three was also won based on GAM's team fighting, but this time they kind of turned it on earlier. It was, fights in the mid game, like that mid lane fight at 18 minutes, and they later had a topside pick at 21 minutes, and then there was, more importantly, the fight at Baron. I mean, the fight in mid lane was really good for them. It was 4 for 2. But the turn from Baron, they didn't turn on to Baron. They were on Baron, and then they turned on to Mad Lions. That was a clean 2 for nothing. And, Levi was putting in some work this series. Those Nocturne ults were really, really good that game. And for some reason, even after that fight, they still contested Baron in a 3 for 5 situation. Like, there are some really bad decision-making in that game 3. But, yeah, we have to say goodbye to them out of the tournament. I think no one is surprised. This is, a third seed from a Western region. I mean, last year they knocked out TL, and there was some inexperience on that roster too. It was Jan's first international tournament. It was APA's, and he didn't even have a full split. So I guess when you have inexperienced third seeds going up against a VCS and PCS, 100 Thieves. But I'm getting sidetracked. My point is that the VCS is pretty good at knocking out a third seeds, apparently. So, yeah. Moving on, though, let's talk about the rest of the Swiss stage so far. And I want to start off with Team Liquid, because I am a huge TL fan. I am pretty disappointed, though. And that's sort of the question we have to ask here. Is Team Liquid, have they been a disappointment, or was it an unlucky draw? Because they drew LNG and then Weibo, and that's a 3rd and 4th seed from China. But these were painful to watch. These were painful to watch because of the mid-game macro. Mid-game macro from Team Liquid was really good. And it looks so good, and they're doing this against like Asian teams, but they're failing to beat these bottom tier LPL teams. I wonder if it'd be different versus LCK. I'm not going to hide the fact that I think Damwon is by far the worst Eastern team at the tournament, and if you disagree, you're kind of delusional, if I'm being honest. Sure, we haven't seen Weibo play against D+, but if they do, I guarantee you they're going to win convincingly. But yeah, it just came down to execution errors. That's what it came down to. So let's talk about these games. Quick water break. But yeah, the LNG game was really hard to watch because they played well holistically speaking, like in terms of like how they were playing the game generally. So I'm not sure what word to use, but basically it came down to two team fights that they lost. And that was the bot side fight, and then it was the Baron fight. So they had really good map movement. Their macro play was great. They just took Baron from them at like 22 or 23 minutes, and they just conceded it. And I don't remember the context too well, but I think that's just because of how they were moving around the map. Like, this is what people were praising TL for, and why we had hope is because their map movement was so clean. Their macro play was really good. But then there was a post-dragon fight in bot lane. That was after the Baron fight. I think it was at 24 minutes. I think it was like the third Drake or fourth Drake taken, not like by TL, but like the fourth Drake that spawned. There was a very clear flash fail, as we probably all saw for everyone who watched it live. He just failed to flash over the wall. He had an amazing flank angle, and he could not make it over the wall, and that's what lost them the game. I mean, sure, LNG only won the fight 3-for-2, but if that Nico hits, if he gets that flank off, it hits the whole team. And then you have, Jan and Kaisa, who can just ult into the backline and probably blow up whatever Jackie Love was playing. Like, they would have, clean swept that fight if, APA didn't have that execution error. So that's the first issue. The first execution issue is APA's fail flash, and then the second is UmTi overextending. He was just overextended in the topside river, and he gave over a free kill, and they contested the Baron after the pick while he was still dead. But I feel like they probably had to. I feel like they couldn't just give over Baron for free, because of that fight in bot side already went bad. They can't just give over stuff for free. So I feel like they probably had to. I totally get why they took the fight. But if UmTi didn't get picked off before it, then they probably could have won. They probably would have won that game. I feel like just fixing even one of those probably would have won them the game. So that was really disappointing. And then there's the Weibo game. We need to talk about that. And TL did really good. This is what I was saying earlier, when there's like a mid-game macro gap. Because they really turned it up after the second Drake. I think after that they had a really good fight, thanks to Core landing his Qs. And he was playing pretty well that game. And APA was putting in work. There was that team fight where I think Jan got picked off, but he got a triple kill. And he also helped get a kill on Tunar. He didn't kill it, but his QE, he did that really well. But guess what? We poorly executed another team fight after that. Oh god, excuse me. That was not a pretty sound. But there was a 4v4 that went really poorly, and what really happened here, I'm not 100% sure. When I first saw it, I initially thought Impact fucked up. I was like, Impact went in too early. He totally fucked up. He wasn't ready. The team wasn't ready. But then I reviewed the footage. I was watching the highlights, and I actually think it was UmTi messing up, because if you look at where UmTi's going, it looks like he wanted to collapse through the river rather than go through the jungle. Like, Core ease him so he can get up there faster. But then they turn and go into river. So there was a clear coordination error. There was a little bit of split decision making, because Core and Jan were clearly able to turn and do it through jungle. But I think they shouldn't. They should have prepared. They should have all three of them should have been on the same page. And it looked like UmTi was the only one who wasn't ready to turn and enter through jungle. He wanted to go through river, but of course there was that pink ward that spotted them, so they knew they were getting collapsed on. So I think it was probably his fault. If you ask me personally, that's what I would say. But it's up to interpretation. Let me know in the comments below what you guys thought about that top lane fight. So yeah, there was that, but then the fight kind of drags on. There's some positioning. APA is in the they're in the jungle corridors, and then they have another issue, and another one is APA. He screws up by flashing in and trying to solo Xiaohu. This is a little bit different because I can kind of see the angle, but I really think it's never the move. Obviously, he needed to be there to QE Ori to prevent Ori from flanking, because if Ori is able to get out of the jungle and just ult an ally, specifically Tarzan, that chain CC is, you're just done for. Not that that matters because we're going to get to what happened there. But APA screws up trying to flash in. I personally, like I said, I think this is really never the move here. I think it's a little bit of an ego play. And even if it worked out, it still would have been a 1-for-1 play, because even if it was Shockwave, even if Xiaohu doesn't land the ult, Shockwave or not, Breathe is there to follow up. He can just hop over and totally, kill you because he has the damage. I think he has the damage on his own, but maybe I'm wrong about that. Again, comments down below. Tell me if you think I'm wrong and you totally saw the angle. But that split second of that split fight causes just a moment of hesitation from Jan and UmTi. If you watch it at like 0.5 speed, you can see they're thinking about turning, but that 1 second of them considering turning was all that Tarzan needed to just, I think, Sejuani into the wall and then ult. I think it's a Z. And then, because Jan also considered turning onto Gnar, he was just too far forward. So he gets CC'd by the Callista R. I think that he was getting CC'd rather than UmTi, because I think they wanted to do a double ult CC chain. Suppression Skarner R into knockup Callista R. But Light just sends it on to Jan. He sends it on to Lucian because he knows he has the damage to kill Lucian. All he needs is a knockup and a few spears and rending, and then, yeah, they lose. And this is not just the fight, this is the game. This was the deciding fight of the game. This was the game-losing fight. There was a Callista pick later on when, he tries to R a carry again, and then he gets ulted by APA. Sorry, he gets ulted by APA, but I feel like that was low-key a bait anyway. They probably didn't expect Light to get picked off. They may have not been coordinated, but even then, like the whole team was there, ready to, collapse. There was no way they were winning that fight around the 6th Drake. That went pretty poorly, obviously. That is just what allowed them to close it out. If they didn't take that fight, I'm not sure what the game would look like. It probably would have looked significantly different, but yeah, I don't know what to say. I just think that fight in top lane was the losing fight. And, there is a consistent theme here, which is APA. Or APA and UmTi. It seems like these are the two players that lose us games. And the first game we were talking about, LNG, is kind of reminiscent of Game 2 at MSI versus T1, where UmTi inted a little bit. yeah, he did that, and then there was also, APA was playing Talia, and he was overextended in mid lane. He got caught out. So yeah, these are the two players that seem to be losing us games on the international stage, and it's really unfortunate and disappointing. Like, this is the best mid laner in the LCS. He really leveled up after MSI, and same thing with Yon. Yon leveled up at MSI, I feel like, and then APA just put his nose to the grindstone, and like, he worked so hard. So I'm not really sure like what to say. It's like, yeah, he's underperforming, but there's only whys and hows to ask. Like, why is this happening? Why is he choking? Why is he making this poor decision? How do we fix this? Maybe a who, like who would fix this problem for APA? And if we can't fix this problem, who would replace it? Like, these are things we can just speculate on. Like, we don't know why this is happening or how to fix it. These are questions we can pose, and then the rest of the community can speculate on. That's really all we have. Yeah, it's just really disappointing. Let's move on to G2. We've been kind of on a somber note for a while now after Mad Lions and Team Liquid. Let's talk about G2, because they are giving us hope, man. They're seriously giving us hope. Hopefully I cut that out. If I didn't, feel free to call me lazy in the comments. Yeah, where was I? G2, right, they're giving us hope. They really pushed HLE in that match they had. Their first match was against Pain. I mean, it was just, those 3 to 4 games were literally just Hydrogen Bomb versus Coughing Baby. You could argue the GAM one wasn't, because, GAM is, you can never count out the VCS. They love to upset, but that first match, I'm not even going to touch, is what I'm trying to say, because it was Hydrogen Bomb versus Coughing Baby. Yeah, of course, a Hydrogen Bomb totally fisted the Coughing Baby and had an easy win, but they went to the 1-0 group, and they were matched up against HLE, and they really pushed HLE. They made them work for a win. Caps was doing some really good split pushing. I mean, he was on Yone that game, and Yone is just absolutely fucking broken. But, like, they got 3 Barons in a row. They got those first 2 with, good play, and then Yike clutched the fuck up and stole that third one. But yeah, they really pushed HLE. They had to work. That was not a free win. They still fell, but, this is the first seed from the LCK. And so when you are able to do that well against probably what is probably the best, Asian team, I mean, there's a worlds factor for T1, and we're going to get there later. Because that's who G2 drew. But anyway, when you can push a team of that caliber, the LCK champions, and then you also beat Weibo, we have to ask, are you now the best team in the West? And the answer is, yeah, probably. I mean, that's most likely a true statement. And I pose that question because, in my eyes, TL came in as the strongest. There was a lot of concerns for G2 around the early game. I don't know about you guys, but it looks like it's improved. It clearly wasn't as bad as it was in LEC, because if they had their LEC summer season early game problems, they would have been getting blown on the early game. Their early game isn't as good. It's definitely significantly weaker than their opponents. HLE and definitely won the early game, and I think Weibo was winning the early game too. But those issues are kind of fixed, and since TL couldn't beat Weibo but G2 did, then that means the verdict is, yeah, they are the best team in the West. I mean, of course, Weibo is super inconsistent, but the level of play between those two games, it's pretty similar. There's not much of a difference. So, yeah, there's a lot of hope for G2, and we're going to get into that hope in a bit. But first, I want to go over some of the other series. With FlyQuest, because they beat GAM. Again, arguably Hydrogen Bomb versus Coughing Baby, and then they moved on to take on D plus Kia. That was a close game, but that was the same thing for Fnatic and FlyQuest. The closeness of those games felt very validating that D plus Kia is a shit team and will not make it out of Swiss stage. They're not making it to they are not making it to the playoff stage. Mark my words. Okay? You can clip that, by the way. I'm confident they are not making it to the bracket stage. But yeah, they took revenge for their MSI loss against PSG after losing to D plus Kia. The early game was pretty bad, but it was like a Kaisa Casio comp anyway. So I believed either way because Quad is a really good Casio player. I think it's one of his most played in his career. So I'm not sure if they would have been able to turn the game around if this game was being piloted by an LPL or LCK team, like aside from DK obviously because they love to throw. But I think if you switched in T1 or Genji or HLE or an LPL team and they started piloting it after minute 20, I don't think they would have turned it around. They probably would have tried. I'm not sure if they would have been successful. Probably would have taken multiple attempts, or 2 attempts, because if you fail those first 2, then you're just fucked. So a cleaner early game would have been nice to see, but aside from that, we don't really have much to say. And speaking of HLE, they're going to face Amon, but we're going to get to that in a bit. Not much to really say about Fnatic. Again, I mean, like I said earlier, it was a close match versus DK, but even if D plus Kia throws a lot, there's still an LCK team, and we know how Fnatic is with macro, so I mean, that is kind of what won them versus GAM, though. Like, the GAM match felt concerningly close, but that was really just, like, a bad team fight or 2, plus Oscar. So that was Oscar being sent really behind. I think he was like 3 levels behind, maybe 4 at one point. So that is a huge point of concern. That is a weak point for sure. I'm trying to remember who HLE's top laner is. I think it's Doran. Yeah, Doran's going to fist this guy in lane. I would not be surprised if they go even further behind. Maybe they might lane swap just to fuck over Oscar. I could honestly see that happening. But yeah, that's really the only thing to say about them. But anyway, let's talk about the upcoming matches and some predictions. So for this, I want to switch over to a different scene. Welcome back. I'm re-recording this, so this feels a little incongruent or a weird transition in cadence or something. My dumbass messed up the audio part when I switched scenes, so yeah. Basically, I wanted to talk about these matchups, focus on the Western ones. A lot less to say about Fnatic and FlyQuest here, because the main hope is they don't embarrass themselves / us. To be fair, this is EU's 2nd seed versus LPL's 4th seed, and EU has a bad track record towards Asian LPL teams. We're usually better against LCK, at least historically speaking, because Caps lost to 2 different LPL teams in Worlds Finals. But yeah, my main hope is they don't embarrass themselves. I definitely think Weibo is going to beat Fnatic. If they want to exceed their expectations, they can push them to a game 3. That'd be the same thing with HLE. I feel like FlyQuest taking a game against HLE is even less likely. But these 5 matchups I think are secure. I think TL is going to do fine against GAM. I think in the situation that somehow, I think in the situation that, GAM pushes them, I'm not sure how that would be. I think it would be maybe through lane swaps, which I want to mention for Damwon versus top. Like I said earlier, I genuinely think D+K is by far the worst Eastern team here. So there's that. But yeah, I think the only way GAM gets a really good early game lead is through a lane swap against TL, because Impact looked off in the Pain series. That game 1 was really close, and Impact did not look great in form. And like I said earlier, you could have argued that Impact was who screwed up the top lane fight. But yeah, Impact has not been looking great in the past 2 series. So I think there's that. And then there's G2 versus T1. It's Worlds, it's inevitable, it's hype. And this is by far the closest matchup. Like, I'm not really sure who to call. I think there's just so much at play here, because it's like G2 took T1 to game 5, and they were up 2-1. They got match point after game 3. It was T1 taking game 2, and then 2 and 3 were taken by G2, and then obviously T1 took 4 and 5 because they won that series. But it's like they took them to match point at MSI so they could win 2-1. But then again, it's like, it's T1 at Worlds. They always level up at Worlds, but like G2 has also leveled up, and it's like they have the home crowd buff. They have a fucking army in the LEC. Like, it's just so hard to say who's winning this. Yeah, it's just hard to say. I think T1 is favored, but I think to discount G2 would be stupid. Can you click for me? Yeah, I think this is more likely. But I want to go back in here and see what happens if G2 wins. Just some quick math for you guys. Because of the way the format works, there is a third chance that if TL qualifies here, they don't qualify like this, which is something I want to talk about. If TL manages to qualify in 3-2, there is a 1/3 chance that they get placed up against a 3-1 team. And there are 3 of those. So there is an 11.1% chance that if TL gets out in a situation like this, that they go up against G2 for a spot in semis, which would be awesome. EU versus NA for a spot in semis, like, that'd be so great for the West. It's unlikely, but if we get really lucky in both this area, then yeah, this is what I want because of my pick'ems. So I had Weibo and Damwon not getting out. I underestimated Weibo. I think a lot of people make that mistake, but this would be best. But however, if TL were to go up against Damwon, I think they would still win. I think they have what it takes. If they short those mistakes they were making against LNG and Weibo, then I think it's possible. But this is, well, this actually has Weibo still getting knocked out. I wonder if we can get one where it's like Damwon versus Weibo, like this. Well, then TL doesn't get out. But I think you guys get the point I'm trying to make, which is that there's a good chance that my pick'ems go well, but there's also, if G2 gets out here, and then we also have that small chance of quarters matchup. But if this happens, then this is also like an ideal draw. This is actually the ideal draw, because again, my pick'ems are correct here, because I predicted TL and G2. I don't know why I selected these. So this would be awesome to get, but there's also a chance of this. And we need to talk about this because the thing is, I think we all want to see a TL versus G2 matchup. I don't want it to be for a spot in quarters, but it is possible. That would really suck because then we'd only get one team out. And then Weibo would also get out. But yeah, hopefully that doesn't happen. Hopefully we get something like this. We still get EU versus NA. TL wins versus Damwon because they're the worst Asian team. And then we get something like this. So yeah, that's really about it. That's all I have to say. And with that, that is the end of the video. Thank you for sticking around for this long. And I will see you guys before quarters. Bye.